Today's guest is someone whose journey from the extremes of organised crime to a life of purpose and impact is nothing short of extraordinary. Stephen Mee was once one of the UK's most prolific drug importers, operating at the highest levels of the criminal underworld and even dealing direct with the infamous Cali cartel. That life ultimately led to a 22-year prison sentence, but Stephen's story didn't end there. It transformed. Since his release, he became a highly respected artist with his powerful work gaining recognition from major names, including the late fashion icon Vivienne Westwood. Beyond the canvas, Stephen now travels to schools across the UK, speaking to students about the brutal reality of crime and using his experience to help steer young lives in a better direction. This conversation is about redemption, resilience, and the strength it takes to rewrite your story, no matter how far off course you've gone. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure to have you there. So much to tell, and no matter how long the podcast lasts, not enough time. Take us back to the beginning. Where did it all start for you? I know you were born in Manchester.
Yeah, I was born in Manchester in 1958. We got moved into a brand new house at the time, and we've been living. Well, I was born in that house. We was living further down, and we got a new house, and like I say, there were 9 of us. 2 died early on in life, and the 7 of us survived. 4 of us left now, but still 4 going strong. Born poor. We had loads of problems. My mother she was always sick. She ended up with diabetes, but the thing that was the bad thing was the Parkinson's. So she had full-blown Parkinson's, and back in I think in the 60s, when she had her first operation, they bolted a big machine and bolted it onto her head and went in with probes and destroyed bits of brain and stuff like that. A few years later, they found that they could give her Valium, Roach 5, Roach 10. So that seemed to help, but she tended to mix it with alcohol. She was all over the place, really. Very strong drugs mixed with alcohol. We know now today that you shouldn't do that. And she could be found anywhere, my mother, to be honest. She could be in the local Catholic club. She could be found anywhere in between there and our house, in somebody's garden or in somebody's house. You know, she lost a lot of abilities to think for herself when she was in that state. So it was there was always problems anyway with that. And she used to get money from anywhere, you know, mostly through kids, either selling the food that we'd already bought, going round to the neighbours with a little package of groceries, or she used to send me and my sister and my younger brother to do the shopping, but she'd never give us enough money, and she'd always have a big list. And if we came back without the money, without the food, we used to get beaten up. So we started stealing, really. I suppose that's when it started, when I was about 8, 9 years old. We used to steal the shopping and then keep the money. Eventually, she used to give us a couple of pounds for, say, £5 worth of shopping. And we used to end up stealing it because we were just little kids. Nobody noticed back in those days. And we kept getting away with it. We never got caught because nobody would look at 3 kids, think that there was shoplifting. But then come Monday, we was out with everything we'd stolen.
Yeah.
Trying to sell it to the neighbours so she could go out drinking again. So it was just a vicious circle of.
Yeah.
My dad always worked. He was an electrician. Apparently, he was a pretty good one. He ended up at one of the top bosses in British Rail in Newton Heath, which was a big repair centre. And he used to work all over the country, connecting loads of electrical things. As you can imagine, it was a dangerous job as well. But he worked all his life, and he was put in prison, in debtor's prison, about 20 times that I can remember, because my mum had not paid any of the bills and stuff like that. And back in those days, they used to come and just take you to prison for debt in the 60s.
It's crazy to think like that could happen.
Yeah, quite well. In my lifetime, it's all changed now, obviously, but you know that's what used to happen. And I just evolved really from that to joining like local gangs. But I was like 9 years old, and they used to take me to the old style warehouses along the canals, which was a big thing. Most of them have been knocked down now, but they used to do like like an Oliver Twist thing where they'd push me through the window and then I'd sneak in and open the doors, and that was it really. And I just grew from there. I learned how to steal cars by the age of 12. By the age of 13, 14, I got like 5 or 6 serious charges, GBH, car theft. The GBH was a big thing in the area. We used to have local wars between Newton Heath and Clayton. And it used to be all the kids from each area, and we'd run down the hill after the others, and they'd run up the hill, and then they'd feel strong and run down the hill, and we'd run up the hill. It was just a tit for tat thing, throwing stones and things. But I hit somebody with a stick, and it was a big fight, and they picked me out. But they gave me, for GBH, they gave me a £10 fine. So it was a
£10 fine for you.
£10 fine and 12 months suspended sentence. I'm sure now I'd get at least 10 years for something like that.
How old were you at the time?
I was 13.
13.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you felt at the time?
Sorry?
Was that at the magistrates that you went to
as a
when you were
magistrate.
13?
Yeah. And I already had a record by then anyway. My first charge was 1970, so I was 12, and that was for burglarising a school, a local school. I'd already burglarised.
What happened there? Did you find yourself just kind of in that area and just while we're here, or what happened there?
Yeah, more or less. It was very local, literally a few streets away. And yeah, we were just on the roof messing about, and we found one of the windows open on the skylight and got in. And one of the local lads, he got caught first because somebody recognised him, and he grasped me up, and we both ended up in the local police station and thingy. But the money that I got, I went to a local shop and bought a big Toblerone. The local Bobby sort of had a chat around the area and found out, he said, any kids in here spending money, there was only a few shops in the area. And they soon got back to me again, and the other lad, it more or less got dealt with pretty quickly. We got caught more or less straight away for it. I can't remember what I got. It was a suspended sentence, I think it was, for that. But then I went on to learn how to drive through other of the, I won't say it was a gang, but it was just local lads, older ones, who was struggling like everybody in the early 60s. It was it's not like today. And we just carried on, and I started stealing cars. One of them taught me how to drive, even though I couldn't really reach the pedals, and I stole a few cars, and that carried on for months and months. And in the end, I ended up stealing a car from Newton Heath and then driving into Manchester. Met a young lad in Manchester who was a Pakistani lad. He took me to a club in Moss Side, which is a really notorious area.
Yeah.
And I was, 14, I think, 13, 14, going in there. And I went into the club. It was all very shady place, and came out, stole another car from outside there, and then started driving about. It's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Ended up on the local moors, Saddleworth Moor, where the Moors murderers dumped the bodies. It was wasn't a good place for a young person to be.
Yeah.
And that car ran out of fuel. We got picked up by police. Ended up, they dropped us off on the other side of the moor, and I stole the Lord Mayor's car. Didn't know it was a Lord Mayor's car, but it was a big house on the top of the moors, and it happened to the Trime Toledo Sport. So a Mark 1 or Mark 2. So people who know that car, very old, and there was nothing sporty about it. And I fell asleep further down close to a place called Greenfield, which is a local beauty spot. And got woke up by 4 police in the morning, knocking on the window. And they dragged me and kicked me down to the police station in the lad who was with. My dad came, picked us up, and he beat me up and in front of the police. The police were slapping me across the head, and nothing vicious, clips around the ear type of stuff, and trying to teach me a lesson. But he did warn me back then. I remember his words clearly. Said, if you carry on like this, you'll end up in big trouble, which is quite wrong. Got home, my mum beat me up, sent me to bed. Even my brothers beat me, give me a clip round the ear for being stupid. And things like that. Because I was the only one in the family who did anything. And then I got what's called DC, which is a detention centre. At the time, it had just been introduced as a sharp shop, and it literally was. We got beat up nearly every day by the guards. Vicious training regime, education, but every day you ended up with something, either a clip round the ear by the guards or worse, or punched in the face. Didn't do much for me because within a few days I was out stealing cars. The only thing that changed was that the police could never catch me anymore because I was so fit. And that's what
Yeah.
literally every day we had to run 5 mile, 6 o'clock in the morning, and then do a circuit, then do education, and then do circuits again. So it was a training ground, and a lot of people who was in there was telling everybody else what they'd done and how they did it. And I just got better at stealing cars. In between that,
That sort of thing
obviously,
is yeah. So
there you go.
with the detention centres, it's either a total deterrent for somebody that's I don't want to be here, or it's the opposite. It's a training ground. There's no sort of in the middle there. Do you think?
Yeah, no, there's no in the middle. People are either terrified or you're learning there. I got took under a 16-year-old. I think I was just turning 14 when I got in there, September. Yeah, so I was 14, and the highest age was 16. But they were so much bigger than lads, and they controlled the jail. But they found out what I'd done and sort of took me under the wing. So I was okay, protected sort of thing in there. When I got out, went back to school, but they banned me from school. Took over a year to get back into school. So I missed a big part of the school. I left school with no qualifications. But I went into a good job straight away because I was good at drawing and painting. And went on the, what do you call it, the school job thing that they do, where you go to see what jobs they can find you. And they found me an advertising job in Manchester, being to do visualising, which meant a day release at Oldham College of Art, which I completed and got me Citizen Guilds in graphic art and design and sign writing. Because you used to make the big signs in every town where you had a button and you pressed it and it lit up. So we used to make the adverts for all the way around there, and then other signs that we did. So I learned how to sign write everything. But by 1980, 81, 82, I'd been married, got caught again for something, for other commercial burglaries, got divorced in prison, came out to nothing again, but managed to get into a bike shop that I'd been with before, and eventually took over that bike shop on like a franchise. So I became a franchisee and did all right for a couple of years, but then he decided to take it back. He didn't want to do it anymore, so we lost the franchise, and I just sort of walked out and left, and then back into crime again. I got caught for a few stupid cars, ringing cars. Did a lot of ringing cars, actually, one a few. Got caught through other people keeping we used to steal cars, and then they used to get chopped up into pieces, or we'd steal a car, take all the interior out, and then dump the car near to the pickup people who used to pick them up for the police. And then we'd go in and buy the car for a very cheap price and then put all the stuff back in it again. And then we had a perfect car again, which you could get good money for back in those days. But yeah, carried on with that. Eventually I got caught for stupid things. But again, cars and then motorbikes. Got caught on a motorbike. Did a few stupid things in court. Was offered to have the motorbike taken into TIC, taken into consideration. And like an idiot, because I wanted to keep the car that I've been charged with, I told them to, no. Had I took it, it would have just been a TIC, and I would have got the 18 months that I got anyway for the car. But when I finished the 18 months, the gate arrested me then for the bike. So I lost out and got another 18 months on top for that. And then I left the country once I got out. I absconded from an open prison called Kirkham, just climbing over to go and visit a female friend. And they did a search because they seen somebody else going over there's only a small fence, it's an open prison. But if you're not there and when they do the count, you're absconded. So I absconded from
What made
there.
you do that?
I didn't mean to abscond. I just went over the fence to meet a girl. I'd done it a few times and come back, but it sort of come on top because of somebody else getting seen going over the fence. So they started searching.
You're always going to come back.
Yeah, I was going to come back. I only had I had 5 months to complete. In an open prison, it was easy time, really. There's no reason for me thinking. But if you go back, you end up getting taken straight out of there back to Cat B prison or whatever. So I decided to not go back. Then I was on the run then in England, and I decided to travel to Holland. So it was like that, 1987 or something.
What was life like on the run? What's that? Because for a lot of people listening and whatever, you kind of can't imagine it. Is it you're paranoid? Is it every car that goes by, or what's it like?
Yeah, well, in those days, in the middle to late 80s, it was quite easy because there was nothing. There was no phone, there was no cameras anywhere. There's no checks and computers at the ports and things like that. So it was quite easy then. If you had a bit of money, you could travel anywhere. You could go down to the ferry in Dover, and just even if you didn't have a passport, you could get a 3-day passport, literally at the port. Again, like there's no way of checking anything back though in those days. They could, if they had your fingerprints there, and then they could go and check it. But there's no instant checking anyway back then, so it was quite easy to travel. But once I got into Holland, I was like a completely free man, and that was when I started smuggling. My first big smuggle was the cocaine one from Ecuador. But prior to that, I'd already been stealing cars from England and taking them to Spain, swapping them for cannabis, and taking the cannabis all the way up through Europe into Holland. I've been doing that for about a year. Not big money in it, but reasonable. And got myself established.
How did you get into that? How did you get
Just
into that? Was
again,
it sort of people you know?
yeah, just a friend saying, "Oh, can you get a car down here?" And I said, "Yeah." And by the time I got the car down, everything was waiting for me. So we swapped the stolen cars for cannabis, and literally somebody I was talking to, they said that they could do that, but they could get the cannabis, but they couldn't get the cars, or couldn't get the people to get the cars there. And it was in the days when getting registrations from cars was really easy. It's not like it is today. Getting the tax disc out of a car was easy because you just broke into the car and took the tax disc and then plated the car up to the tax disc, so that matched. And then you could just get logbooks from anywhere, really. There's cheap, easy to get. And we had not a constant supply, but every month or so we'd be taking a car down to Spain and moving it up to, not always to Holland, sometimes to France or Germany and different places through the people that we met as we were going on. So I established myself in Holland quite easily, started speaking Dutch and mixed with the Dutch criminals rather than anybody else. Most people who go to Amsterdam stay around Amsterdam, but I moved out pretty quickly into the farm type areas where it was open space and nice houses and what have you.
Deliberate.
Yeah, because when you're in the town centres, there's that many police about, and if the English police believe that you're there, they'll mostly send the details to Amsterdam to look for you around those areas, because you can hide in Amsterdam as well, but not like you could hide if you was out in the countryside and you looked like you had a job. And it was a lot, for me anyway. Other people did it different ways. I did it that way. And we eventually got into meeting up with people who were doing cocaine from Ecuador. And I was one of the first to do it, and they put 24 kilo of cocaine in my bag, and it was arranged in Ecuador for the military to help it get on the plane. And then on the side of Europe, we just you risked it, whether it was a kamikaze, what we used to call. And if they stop you, they stop you. And if you got through, you got through. The only thing in the bag was sponge and cocaine. That was it.
A couple of quick questions on that. When it went from sort of cannabis to cocaine, did you think the stakes are a lot higher now? The risk factor in every aspect is going to be higher if we do this, but the money's greater. What was your thoughts there at that
Yeah,
time when the
yeah,
opportunity come along?
exactly that. That the risk was a lot higher, but the money was great. I was sort of on the run, if you can call absconding being on the run. It didn't technically apply in Holland. I got caught in Holland then at that period. We stole a car in one part of Holland, and we'd gone out looking into supermarkets and things like that to steal the money. Because in those days, the Dutch supermarkets used to just leave the money in the middle. They had a little glass office in the middle, and where everybody could see. But we used to sort of get in there, but they used to leave the money either on the top or in the safe. But not all of them, but some of them left the keys in the safe, and it was quite easy to steal quite large amounts of money, like 30, 40,000 pounds back then. And there was no violence involved. It was just quick and easy. Nobody noticed anything. And if people did notice, you just ran away anyway. And if you got caught, the liberal Dutch used to just deport you. But when they came after us in a place called Laren, one of the people that I was with, an old Dutchman who turned out to be a policeman. We had a bike and a push bike, and he had a push bike, sorry. And the person I was with said, "Oh, you got a puncher," to this man, which was you shouldn't be talking to people without trying to do criminal things. But he heard the accent as Irish. And 2 weeks prior to that case, they tried to cross the border at Assen, up that way. And it came on top. There'd been a big fight with the IRA, and nothing to do with us, but we were just unfortunate at the time. And they thought we was Irish because of our Manchester accent. Sounds a bit Irish to the Dutch. So when we was out in the stolen car, they came behind us with motorbikes, and I drove off. Turned into a big chase. The police motorbike hit the back of the car, ran into the back of the car. He fell off, and then the call went out. Irish suspects, Irish possible terrorists, officers are down, all that type of panic, and we was driving off, not knowing this, and they started shooting at the car. We got 6 bullet holes in the car from the police. There's only one that I seen. He was stood in front of us as we was going back onto the motorway, and he was at the side. I seen a gunshot, but I thought it was just a warning shot. Apparently there was quite a few. We actually got away from the chase, and about 4 hours later they arrested up a tree.
What was going through your mind? You've got a police bike that's crashed into the back of you. They think you're IRA terrorist, and you're being shot at by Dutch police. What's going through your mind?
Just to get away. It was all, obviously, I was in a car called a Toyota Supra twin turbo, so it was a very fast car for its day, still is today. And I just didn't notice anything. We're just trying to get away. The lad who was with us gave up, and he just was hiding in the literally in the glove box, really, I suppose. And so I had no directions from anyone. I just had to get away. We went through a couple of roadblocks on the motorway, but they was all just waving to get us to stop. So it didn't seem like anything bad at the time. And we eventually got caught, took into the police station. I got 9 months for that. But it was in there. Then they took me to a place called Groningen, where they taught me how to speak Dutch quite well. And I ended up doing that. Came to the end of the sentence. I tried to escape from there, knowing that in Holland there's no sentence for escaping. It's you're allowed to escape in most of Europe, actually. And as long as you don't damage or hurt anybody. The escape failed, but the following day, the police came and took me to their main station instead of being released because I was wanted in England for the absconding. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, the sergeant came up and said, "Well, listen, if nobody been to pick me up," he said, "They've not been to pick you up, so bugger off," sort of thing, and let me out. So he released me onto the streets of Groningen. I got in touch with people that I knew, and they came, picked us up, and took me back to Amsterdam, and it all started then. After that, I did the smuggle to South America, came back. Instead of selling the stuff in Holland, I went all over the place selling it. I ended up in Switzerland, Germany, getting a lot more money for it than I was doing in Holland.
How did you get to know the people that you're doing business with? I mean, kind of questions. I mean, first of all, what's your thoughts when you're going to, was it Venezuela, first of all?
First was Ecuador.
Ecuador. What's going through your mind that you're on your way over about to do a drug deal with like South Americans, or is it just business? You got anything extra you're thinking about or worrying about?
I was just a mule. Really. I was just a courier on that one. I'd already checked the possible punishment back in Holland, and for doing something like that at the time, you get maybe 3 or 4 years, no more. They put it down to you being a mule, which is what I was, and nobody ever got caught, so we didn't know what you get, but that's what you'd end up with. The Dutch in the late 80s, that they thought differently to the rest of the world. Very liberal, very open. Everybody was taking cocaine, not
What's
me though.
what's going through your mind when you're going through an airport and you've got a suitcase of cocaine?
Nothing. Just
Nothing.
trying to keep a straight face. In Ecuador, it was covered. All we had to do was get out the taxi, take it to the baggage, but literally stood behind the baggage was a general waiting to follow the bag onto the plane. So because back then in Ecuador, it was like a military dictatorship at the time. So the military was moving most of the stuff. But when we got off the other side, like I say, I had in the back of my mind that if I get through with this, I'll get about 60,000+ pounds. If I get caught, I'll get maybe 3 years. And to me at the time, because I was on the run for absconding, it seemed a reasonable risk, put it that way. And I did it and got through.
Is it when you come out the other side, is it just sheer relief?
Yeah, once you get away from the airport, yeah. There's people waiting for me at the other side of the airport. Once we got into the car and changed card after the airport and got into the apartment, and then I separated my thing and then went to my own place. Yeah, that's when the relief fit in. But you're just working up until that point.
When you get away with it, do you think, do you know what? I've been lucky this time. I'm not going to do it again. Or do you think, well, let's work this time. We can keep doing it.
It was difficult at the time because I was wanted in England. Even though it was only for absconding, I'd have gone back. Maybe I would have got a bit more than the period that I had left, which was only 5 months. Maybe they give me a few months on top for absconding. But it was still not wanting to go back. I was sort of in the middle of a potential crowd or group that could take me to a different place, money-wise.
Do you have a plan in place, longer term, what you were going to do? You're planning to make really good money. Did you have like an end goal?
Anyway, say that again, sorry.
Did you have like an end goal, right? If I've got X amount of money, then that's me. I can go there, or I can get out of
At
here.
that time, I didn't think like that because I wasn't too bothered about getting caught because it was only a minor thing in England. Once I went back, once I finished with that and we started working with these Suriname people, I ended up in going on again another cocaine smuggle, but from the Dutch Antilles, which was Aruba, Curacao, and there I moved in with a Colombian family while we was doing the smuggle. But the smuggle was where it was being put into cans and sewn into briefcases way before people realised what was going on in Europe about that type of thing. And the deal was that we had to get couriers to take it back. So I was going to stay in Curacao and then people would send people over. But in between all that, the Belgian police was approached by somebody who'd been asked to courier. They did had some problems with the police, but they did a deal and gave up the people. And then the English police and the Belgian police set up a sting type operation where they put undercover coppers into undercover customs into the operation. And the Belgians we was working with, they didn't know because they'd brought these English police into it, and they got right into the system. I was back in England at the time, travelling backwards and forwards, and we'd arranged for some cannabis to be smuggled in. And in the background, the cocaine thing was going ahead. Technically, I wasn't really part of that, but I got dragged into it. And then it got caught. The undercover was really undercover. They broke so many laws and rules and things to get it. The Dutch refused that they could do the operation, but they still went ahead and did it and got caught. They got arrested in Miami themselves, the actual customs officers. So they smuggled it out of a country that they wasn't allowed to do. Then they smuggled it into America and got arrested. They covered all that up in the trial. We didn't find out until after the trial, after I'd been found guilty. And then sort of halfway through my trial for that, the laws changed again. I think, I keep saying it, but I'll have to look it up, but I think it was Michael Howard at the time. He decided to make doubled sentences, really, for serious crime. I was thinking at the time when I got arrested that I get 12 years, and they more or less doubled it. Other people had been up and got massive sentences, and I decided to escape then. So it was arranged to escape. I got moved to Risley prison, and I escaped from there on the transport from Risley to Manchester prison to move us back down for sentencing. I had already been found guilty and I was waiting sentencing. And from the trip from there to the sentencing court, I escaped. Ended up in, yeah, go on.
How did you get a plan in place to do the escape?
Just through people I knew. Used to do it through other people in the prison who helped. And it wasn't a big plan. It was, they got a driver who was willing to pull the coach up, and it was up to me to get off the coach. That was more or less the deal. When I say the coach, I do mean an old-fashioned coach, the old type with the sloping back on and thing.
Yeah.
Then they didn't take prisoners to prison in the transports that you see today. They took the guards used to take you to prison or from prison to prison. And the doors were just normal doors, emergency exit doors with an emergency exit pull. But the person who was outside in the car, he pulled up. He'd waited outside all day and they'd moved us in the morning and then in the afternoon, 1st of April as well. So they moved us in the afternoon and we managed to get pulled up at first on the roundabout, but a police van was literally in front of him. And he thought he knew what was going on, but he carried on down the dual carriageway. The police van just drove off. He was just there because he'd made a traffic mistake, but he didn't stop him or anything. He just drove off. But further down the corridor, the dual carriageway, he pulled out again, stopped him. I just jumped up and shouted, "Nobody move." I had to drag the person with me who was on the chain, on the handcuffs, and nobody moved, really. We got to the front of the coach, pulled the emergency exit, and we got off. And the guards got a bit of bravery by that time, or just reacting by that time. And bit of a scuffle, but nothing thingy. And we got into the car and drove off to Liverpool.
What's going through your mind at that time? What's going through your mind? Because that's an all or nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was all or nothing because I didn't think that the way the sentencing structure was moving, I just thought it could double it, which they ended up doing and doubled it to 22 years. I watched the sentencing on TV in a flat in Liverpool, and I was shocked myself.
What's going through your mind that you're sitting there and somebody's handing out a sentence for you for 22 years? What is going through your mind?
Well, at the time, obviously I was free, but it was a shock.
Yeah.
It was a big shock. I knew I was in a lot of trouble, and it was too late now. I'd had loads of thoughts before it, whether I should bother doing it or not. And it was just the situation of the way it built up. I had no money while I was sat in prison. I thought, well, if I escape, at least I can earn some money maybe. I wasn't thinking straight, to be honest. It was madness.
What year was that?
That was 1993, 1st of April 1993. I got caught in 1991, and then it was sort of 18 months before we came to the receiving my sentence. I was on trial for about 3 or 4 months.
The trial went on for 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, about 3 or 4 months, yeah. A long time.
And was that the sentence that you first met Curtis Warren?
Yeah. I met him in 1991 when I first got arrested. Oh, no, it was 1992. Because I had the 5 months of prison to do for the absconding. So that was done more or less in police cells. Well, in fact, it was all done in police cells. Strangeways had just gone under. They had the Strangeways riots back then.
I remember, yeah.
But by the time I got in there, they'd repaired most of it, but they'd made a few mistakes apparently. So they had to close a lot of wings down, and they moved everybody out into the police cells. So anybody, for them who had a lower sentence, which to them I had 5 months, they didn't know I was on. Well, they knew I was on remand. So they moved me to all the police cells. So they kept us in police cells for about 5 months. And eventually I got back to strange ways. Seeing Curtis in there, he was on Cat A. I was on the normal part of the wing. But the Cat A in those days, they just dedicated a certain cell, not the whole wing or the whole prison. The Cat A was rare in those days. And he was stuck in his cell all the time. But because I'd had a bike shop in Prestwich, which was just up the road, I knew a lot of the guards, knew where they lived, knew the proper names, everything, you know. And they used to let Curtis out onto the wing, and they'd let me into his cell, and we'd have chats and play chess and what have you, and compare stories of how we got to that position.
He comes across with the documentaries and the books as kind of almost mythological because you've never sort of seen an interview with him there. I guess he's just like a regular guy, but was like very smart with what he was doing.
Once we started speaking, he'd been doing more or less what I'd been doing for the last couple of years, been to the same places, and we just sort of got on, I suppose, because, you know, we was in for more or less the same thing. He was in for a 500 kilo, I was in for 6.3 kilo, so it was a difference in that. But it was still smuggling. We'd end up with more or less the same sentence, really, if we both would have got found guilty and done a sentence. So, you know, we hit it off and could play chess and share stories, I suppose. And that was it. We never made any contact for anything else other than that, because he was due to go to court. I was due to go to court. At that time, I never had plans to escape at all. When the plans came in, I found out I ended up getting sent to Risley prison, and that's where I escaped from. And then I had to stay in a flat for about 3 months.
What's that like? 3 months in a flat, can't go out.
Every other day, somebody would bring me food and anything that I needed. It was hard, but it had to be done because of the seriousness. It was 22 years, you know, so it wasn't a thing that I wanted to give myself in for. And eventually we got a private plane, and we flew to Holland from sort of West Yorkshire.
I mean, even when somebody says we've got you a plane, are you still nervous, thinking, is this going to be a sting, or are you confident that the people that's there is going to be fine with their word?
Well, I knew the people who'd arranged the plane, the people who was in my. I don't like saying gang because we wasn't technically a gang, but yeah, in my gang. I knew the people who would be meeting on the other side as well in Holland. Yeah, you're nervous when it's happening because first of all, I didn't know where I was going. I was hid in the back of a car, so I didn't even see where I was going. And I get out and get into a twin engine plane, you know, with a pilot who I didn't know, and more or less set off straight away and got off to Holland, landed in a smaller airport there, and just literally walked out. No passport being shown, nothing. Just ended up in.
You're back in Holland, you've got to make money, you're looking up the old contacts again.
Yeah, there was money there for me once I got there. I didn't have much money, but I had living money. People had supplied money with obviously the hope that we'd start doing something again. But then I got back in touch with Curtis and started working because his case had collapsed. And then I started working with him on certain things, not on everything. Just when he needed stuff, I used to supply it for him and for other people because I had a lot of contacts by this time. The people, when we did the smuggling in South America, and when we did the Ecuador one, you know, it built up a bit of a reputation. And the problem at the time was that the Colombians were just coming to Europe. They got drugs there, but they didn't have people to sell it or any distribution system at all. And that's where I came and started moving Colombians' drugs. They used to drop off 100 kilo, 200, 300. That built up to 500 to 1,000 to whatever I wanted, really. They had tons of it in there, but the selling structure wasn't there at the time. And that's where we stepped in. And other people obviously stepped in, helping them move it. And they just kept growing and growing. Ended up going to Colombia myself.
Yeah, because by then the Cali cartel would have been the biggest cartel in Colombia because Pablo Escobar would have been gone in '93.
Yeah.
What are you thinking when you're when you're there with the Colombian cartel? What's going through your mind? Just is it just business? They're normal people, or you're thinking anything different?
Well, it was a bit more than business because once I went on the first meeting, where I just flew into Bogota, they came and picked me up literally at the airport with military police. So everything sort of changed again, on a different level. We ended up getting taken from there to a massive ranch, which was owned by the top of the cartel, which was Lucho at the time. And he sort of looked after us after there. But I had to go on the meeting to explain what had happened with the 3,000 kilo that they'd sent to Europe, which was part of the deal from before. And they wanted to know what had happened. So I told them everybody had been caught. The cocaine was caught by the British government, and the Dutch and the Belgians. They caught their share of it. And that I had nothing to do with it. I was in prison at the time. They kept checking, going out of the room, checking. People say
What were
that
they doing? Yeah, where were they checking? Were they
There was
making phone
phoning the
calls?
contacts in England and in Holland, so they had people on the phone who then just checked the normal systems. Put my name into Google and came up with what I'd done and what I hadn't done.
What's going through your mind? You're facing like the head of the cartel. You're in Colombia. There's people that's leaving the room. There's 3,000 kilos of missing cocaine. They're coming
Yeah.
backwards and forwards. What are you thinking?
Well, I was thinking I was okay because it wasn't me. This was something that happened before I even knew these people, and I knew that because it was top of the group, they'd have contacts and know how to check. And I had my own people who they got in touch with as well, Colombians over there. It was all done through a translator as well. There was time in between to think and thinking, but I never really thought that anything would go wrong. It was only afterwards that I thought maybe I wasn't coming out of that room. One of the answers got
Yeah,
gone wrong, you know. But it went
yeah.
okay, and stayed there for several months. Lived on this big ranch. Had some strange people there flying in and out in helicopters and aeroplanes. I did a couple of flights into Venezuela from there with the Colombians because I could fly. Uh, yeah, time just went by. I spent about 6 months on a tropical island and waiting for boats to come that never came, and drop offs that were supposed to be in the middle of the ocean that never happened. We ended up doing a few different things, sending cannabis back and just waiting for something to happen, where we could get a container back, which was our main thing. So I was flying backwards and forwards to Colombia and getting picked up by military police at the airports, taken to senators' houses, and it was all corrupt, proper corrupt still, even though Pablo had gone. The others just stepped into his place. I spent about a month at one of the top senators, El Papa, it was his nickname. And, it was just a strange life, let's put it that way. But there was just normal people. There was no threats of violence or anything. It was, even though I've never been in that position, I could imagine it being the same as any boardroom where they've had problems and the directors are trying to sort it out. It was that, and the people was all suited and everything was immaculate around them. They had all sorts of military police to move them about and normal police as well. Yeah, it was strange, and I knew I was in big trouble if anything went wrong, but I was also stuck in a position where I had 22 years waiting for me in England.
What are you thinking about at that time? Are you thinking, I just want to get through this, or are you accepting of where you're at now, or are you thinking, if I can get this amount of money, or is it just each day at a time?
It was mostly each day at a time. I had a target of a few million that I needed to stay away because it cost a fortune to do what I was doing at the time. When I escaped and I went to Holland, I started renting a place in Amsterdam, like I say, but I quickly moved out of there and moved into nice places where the Queen lived and judges lived, and you know very expensive houses like £5,000 a month uh, in great areas, big houses. You don't stand out, even though it might look odd. You don't stand out if you've got the nice car and you dress properly and you act like a normal person. But because we was in Holland, your neighbours, well, my neighbour turned out to be the local rogue. he used to run the whole area. He had a pub there, and he changed the pub into two houses, rented one of the houses out, and lived next door, literally, in his own detached house. And he had a big river boat, because it was right on the banks of the Amstel River. He sort of observed a few things that we was up to, even though he was trying to be inconspicuous. He sort of picked it out, and came one day and offered us some cannabis for sale. And it was at a time when nobody had it. It was ridiculous. It was about 3,200 guilders, which at the time was about £1,200, I think, something like that. But nobody had it. And then we found out that it was coming from the Bulldog coffee shops. And then we also found out that whenever the Dutch police caught cannabis coming into the country in containers or at the airport, they used to sell it to the Bulldog coffee shops, because it was a technically a legal thing and they could get the money for it and tax it. So it was a win-win for the Dutch. They're doing it legally, they weren't doing it behind anybody's back. But we got into these people and they started supplying thousands of kilos for us when nobody else had it, only that they had it.
To
No,
Europe.
UK, people used to come over and buy it for the UK. I wasn't working with the UK. I didn't need to. I was could make as much money selling it to Germany as I could to people from the UK. Switzerland, places like that, they used to pay a premium for it, especially if you got it delivered to them. Yeah, all over Europe, really.
With the actual drug deals, how do they go down? Are they straightforward, or is it somebody tries to be a bit clever, or how do they actually realistically go down?
Again, at different times, we had a lot of trust with people. The Colombian family who I was working with had been to England, had seen my thingy, I'd been to there where they lived in Curacao and in Colombia. And we knew each other for a few years by this time. And trust was built. Plus, it was everywhere. They had to trust people. They had to trust somebody to get rid of it. You know, if you sat on 1,000 kilo cocaine, you're sitting on a hot thing and you want to get rid of it. And my group or me was the people who could get rid of it. You know, we could sell 500 kilo in a couple of days, all cash as well. You know, but it was all, you know, I'll drop it off there, you drop the money there. The phone calls will the usual drug deal where the money's got to be saved, the drugs have got to be saved. When they're in the right place, the phone call gets changed. You set off with it, you do that with it. But you know, there's been a few mistakes, like I've said in the past on other things. As we left £5 million in the back of a car, which was part of the purchase price. The Colombians went out partying in the car. We just swapped cars rather than thingy. They went out partying over the weekend and came back on the Monday and asked me where the money was. And I told them it's in the boot, and they ran out of the house. Ran straight to the car and just stood there. And I thought it was going wrong the other way, thinking that they was at it. You know, we got the drugs are already gone. And they was messing about, driving about, going to clubs in Amsterdam and Rotterdam with £5 million in cash in the boot. So I wish I stole that car.
Yeah, that would have been one worth keeping.
Yeah.
So you're living in a house on the outskirts of Amsterdam now. There's a group of you there. Curtis is there. There's a few others. Is that about the time?
Oh,
Yeah,
Curtis never moved in with me at all.
because he fled the UK, didn't he?
Yeah, he fled the UK, but he didn't go to that house. He went to another house in Sassenheim, which was a house I'd been in for nearly, I think, about a year. And one day, one of my friends came to pick us up to go and play golf. And he noticed that the police was outside undercover up the road a little bit. But he noticed them, they stood out. You know, there's four big men in a car, and he thought there was another car there as well. And for a split second, he thought there was English, which he was right at the time. We didn't know at the time. But I'd moved about 12 times. I'd moved house because somebody had looked at me the wrong way, or somebody had said they'd seen somebody, and I moved house quite regular, which cost a fortune at the time. And on this occasion, there was nowhere I could go because at the back of the house it was open fields, and at the front was one road. But I'd worked out an escape route in case something happened in the area. It had another car parked up, and my friend had come in his own car, and as I drove out with the golf, made sure that the golf bags was put in the back. so that if they was watching, they wouldn't think anything. And we drove off and went down a certain route that unless you knew where you was going, you wouldn't really follow somebody down there. It was like a crescent that came back on itself, and it meant that we drove down there really fast. They was a bit behind us and came back and faced them. So we was going the opposite way to them, and they gave themselves away. Let's put it that way. I drove to Paris straight from that point, dumped that house, and phoned people up, told Curtis, said it was on top, police was outside. But because I'd moved a few times, he was saying I was paranoid. But we later found out that I wasn't paranoid. It was the police, but it was the English police who'd set up the operation again without informing the Dutch, which is one of our main cases, what we tried to fight in the trial. But the Dutch wouldn't have allowed them to do that. They're not allowed to set up people in that way, especially when one of the people, as such as me, was already wanted for 22 years in prison for drugs. If it was left to if the English told them my name, the Dutch would have come straight away and arrested me. They wouldn't have listened to anything they said. They would have just come and arrested me straight away. You're not allowed to be left to your own devices when you're wanted from another country. They come and take you straight away, the Dutch. But the Dutch then took over the operation. I think it was 20 or 37,000 phone calls later. They came and arrested us all after I came back from Colombia with what's called the loading documents from the containers to bring that back.
And
The
that
day
raid
after they
was on
came and arrested me.
yeah, that was on a morning. And you said that when we spoke previously that your gut instinct, you knew something wasn't right, but you feel that you switched off from it.
Yeah, the night before I was on a call to Curtis. It was the first call that we'd had since I just a car. Normally where I lived, it was farms all the way up on both sides, loads of space in between. There was big places, but there's only like 2 farms after mine. And because I've been there for a bit, I knew most of the cars that came in and out, and this wasn't one of them. And again, it was 4 men in a car, but they drove past quickly as I was on the phone. And I just this fleeting moment. I should have literally just gone there and then should have gone back to Colombia. But we didn't. Went to bed and woke up with military soldiers in my room and flashbangs and stun grenades. The windows being blown
What's
out.
going through you? What's going through your mind when that's happening? Is it like, is this even happening? Is it a dream? Or did you know straight away what's happened?
Yeah. Well, once I had a big dog. I had a Neapolitano dog there at the time. Daft as a brush, wouldn't have done anything anyway. There's a visual deterrent rather than an attack dog or anything. It was soft as anything. And it started barking, and the girl that I was with at the time, she went out to open the back door to let the dog out. But it opened up to not a river, but like quite a big stream running right out, more or less within 5 meters outside the back door. But it sloped away because the house was built on a hill. You've seen the dikes and everything in Holland. Well, we was living in one of them on an island in between all the dikes and the farms. She got dragged out by the military police. They're called the arrestati team, but they're not. They are police, but they're technically not. They don't get involved in everyday police. The only thing they do is go arresting heavy criminals, and very good at what they do and very fast and efficient. They came in, took me out within seconds, naked into the back of a car, took me to the police station. I couldn't hear or see anything at this point, really. Took me to their, questioned us for a few days, took us to the local jail, and then I think it was, went in there in October, and apparently they didn't know who I was, which was rubbish, because they already had my fingerprints. I know it was a bit harder in 1996, but they had technology back then to find out who you was. But they couldn't find out who I was until Christmas Eve, apparently. And on Christmas Eve, the arrest team came into the prison, closed the whole jail down, came in, took me outside, a crash helmet on me, ski goggles, bulletproof vest, chains to your feet and to your ankles, round your waist, and put me in a helicopter and took me to a place called Vught, and that was a triple Cat A prison, maximum security.
They weren't messing about transporting you then.
No. Now, once they found out who I was, but the reason why they came so strong is that they'd received from the English government that I'd escaped an armed police transport by armed criminals with machine guns and rocket launchers. That's what was told to the Dutch government. So the Dutch police heard that and came for me with that type of power. And every time I moved after that point, up to that point, we was on a normal wing. It was in a different prison, but he was on a normal wing. But the English didn't want us on normal wing. They wanted in secure places where they could monitor everything. So they literally told lies to the Dutch judiciary, because when I got the technical thing that happened when I escaped was that I got up, said nobody move, and I ran and got off the coach. No guards was injured or hit or anything. No violence, nothing, apart from the person who was strapped to me. I mean, his life changed anyway at that point, because once we cut him off the cuffs and he'd gone to thingy, we dropped him off at Lime Street police train station, and he'd phoned his girlfriend up. He'd met her for the night, did what boys and girls do, and ended up with a child from it.
What what was he saying to you when you're handcuffed to him and he's getting in a car? He must have been so sore. What was he sort of saying to you?
We was getting onto the coach. I only told him when we was walking up the steps of the coach. As I said, something's going to happen in a minute. And literally something did happen, but he had no chance. I was big. I was 24 stone at the time, a solid muscle, training like a lunatic.
Yeah.
And I literally dragged him along to the car. You know, there's no damage to him or anything. I've met him since. He's okay. He's thingy. He got what he was charged with was handling ecstasy, and he got off on his charge anyway when he went back the following day. Never got charged with anything or the escape or anything. They knew he had nothing to do with it, and you know, he went on with his life. I ended up sat in a flat for a few months and ended up in Colombia. It was strange times.
So you've now been to your trials back in the UK now.
Yeah. That was 1993. 92 when the trial. No, 93 when the trial finished. So they found me guilty.
Yeah. So you absconded there. When you got caught by the Dutch police, taken as a triple category A, you was sentenced in the Netherlands there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that? Was it 9 years?
No, I got 7 years.
7 years.
I appealed, and the judge called me cheeky and gave me another year for appealing because of the situation. He was right. The judge was right. I was cheeky. But I had to appeal because Curtis was appealing. He got 12 years. So it was a bit more serious for him. And if you're both together and one of you appeals and one doesn't, it doesn't look good. I didn't really have any choice. I had to appeal. I never thought anything had changed, but there's a lot of doubts in the case, even though it didn't take long. My English trial took about 3 months. When I went for trial with the Dutch, I got there about 10 o'clock and it was finished by 1 o'clock the same day. The whole trial was done and dusted. There's no jury in Holland. It's magistrates, prosecuting magistrates. But because of how the transport was being dealt with, we'd been to court a couple of times. First, we went to Den Haag, and the police declared that they didn't think they could secure it enough because of the level that I was at in their eyes. So they stopped taking us to court there, and they decided on the day what they'd do is that, because I was going by helicopter all the time. This was going by road. I was going by the helicopter because I was the one who escaped in England. So they were giving me extra special treatment sort of thing. On the day of the trial, because the Dutch believed that they couldn't secure the court, it's all drama, this, all performance. There's nothing about, it's just this is the way that the system keeps paying for itself because they keep saying everybody's bad and this and that. They exaggerate everything. But the Dutch kept moving me by helicopter. So about 4 or 5 times I was transported by helicopters to the courts. And on one occasion, they took me into the court. This is what made them change. And they put us in a cell. And the guards who look after there are not heavy-duty police. They're just normal guards who work like we have in England, where we have court officials. So they're not really trained armed guards or anything like that. They let me out onto the wing. I went to the toilet. So when the armed special squad came back to take me up to see the judge, everything went, the whole jail went alight. Thought I'd escaped. I'd only gone to the toilet. And they came running through everywhere, and the guard was saying, he's on the toilet, But then after that, they changed it. And then on the day of the court, they took all the others to court. They wouldn't let any of the solicitors know where they was going. And they picked me up by a helicopter, took us to a place in Larden where the Queen lives, and dropped us in the middle of a house on a farm. So they turned the farm into a courtroom. One of the officials that we found out later on, either the judge's house or somebody's. And when the helicopter came in and it landed, they had to take the goggles off me so I could see to get down from the helicopter, because they're big police helicopters. And when I seen it, the whole of the area around was bumper to bumper in police vans. So they sealed that off just for that. And as they took me into the house, I didn't know where I was going. And Curtis and this other Stephen, he was sat down. And then they brought me in, took all my things off, took the goggles off. And I was sat in front of I was stood in front of the judge. And he had 2 armed police behind him with machine guns. And I had to stand in front of him, took my cuffs off and everything, and we did the trial, but only lasted about 3 hours. And then they make a decision a couple of weeks later and tell you that you're guilty and you're getting 7 years.
What are you thinking when you're stood there? Are you knowing what's coming, or are you sort of hope springs eternal, maybe something's going to come up that's not going to be 7, 8 years in prison?
No, I knew that. In fact, it was mentioned by the judge himself. My solicitor explained to him that I've got the 22 years, and anything that he would do would make me the highest serving prisoner in Dutch history then. So the judge says, well, what do you want me to do? You know, he's got 22 years because he committed a crime in England and escaped from prison. He's come to Holland, done the same thing, but 10 times bigger, you know, and he stood in front of me. We can't just say, it's okay. You know, they have to sentence you. And I knew that in my own head, that I was going to get something. And when the 7 years came down, I thought, well, I can't really complain about that. But we went for the appeal because there were so many discrepancies in what was going on, you know, with the legalities of everybody, including the police and the customs, you know. So 7 years.
When you're doing the appeal, there's discrepancies. Are you doing it out of, we think we could beat this, or are you doing it more out of hope, do you reckon, at the time?
Yeah, more out of hope. I knew what I'd done. You know, it was me that was doing it. I can't really stand in front of intelligent people and say, "Oh, it wasn't me." But I went to Colombia to go shopping. You know, everybody knew it was me. Other people had to fight their own case. But you know, like I say, I only appealed really just to see what things had said. I didn't expect to get another year. But even when they put the other year on it, it meant 8 years. It's still, considering what we'd done, what wasn't bad. You know, if that were the sort of sentences they were given out in England, I wouldn't have escaped. You know, but the Dutch had a completely different thinking on crime. The maximum sentence in Holland for cocaine, no matter what tons, because I met people later on who was done for 10 times 22,000 kilo. And he got 14 years. It was called Cobus, who was one of the other people on the wing with me in the triple cap. So our 400 kilo was nothing in the eyes of the Dutch. They'd known bigger and much bigger for many years, you know. It was nothing really in the Dutch's eyes, other than criminals who were selling cocaine. No big thing in Holland.
When you were both sentenced, you and Curtis were sentenced in the Netherlands, were you in the same prison?
Yeah, different wings, different parts.
Right.
The first part of the Dutch prison was strange because we got put into the original concentration camp where the Dutch used to send the Jews to Auschwitz and places like that. It was a proper old, well, from the war times. It was where they kept Dutch resistance and sent them onto the death camps. But after about a year, they built a new one. Because what had been happening is that in other prisons around Holland, people was escaping, but they were shooting the guards. Quite a few guards got shot dead by violent escapes from Dutch prisons. And so they decided to build a triple Cat A prison where nobody could escape. And literally nobody has to this day. The regime was very, very strict. Once we moved into the new place, it was even stricter because it had all become electronic by that time. So the doors was opened by electric, and we was never allowed to you had to be minimum of 2 guards with you, but in that situation, you was only locked in a certain area. If you had to move anywhere, there was loads of guards. Literally, you had to do strip searches if you moved off the wing. You literally had to go to work, but you was under 24-hour surveillance. You had to have a strip search to go on a visit. You could never be out with anything. Everything was ridiculous. Every door had 3 doors attached to it, so that you had to walk into one door, through that door to another door, and it was very strict. We was the first person in the prison when they rebuilt it. Me and the others who was there, we was the first people in there, and they didn't get it right at first. They went over the top, and it was Cobus who done the cocaine thing. An event called the ERT affair in Holland, where the head of the police, the head of the customs was involved, politicians was involved, because it was 22,000 kilo a month they was getting in containers, and it was a massive thing. So everybody who was in there, including us, was all sort of seen as extreme, and the conditions and the way that they used to control us was quite extreme, really. So Cobus, who had loads of money, he took them to the European Court of Human Rights, and they had to close it down. They closed it down under the grounds of inhumane and degrading treatment. They moved us out. I had about 8 months or something like that to go to the end of my sentence there, and they had to close it all down. It was closed down until recently, actually, and they moved us to another place in I can't remember the name of it now, further down, but it was a big hotel type thing, multi-story block of flats, and they had a double Cat A cell system at the top of there, which was a little bit easier, not as hard as a triple Cat A. And I got moved out of there and sent back to England. They picked us up in a helicopter, took us to the airport. Our RAF jet was there with special flying squad, literally. It was a flying squad back then. And they brought us back to England. It took them an hour taking me out of the prison cell in Holland, to a prison cell in England. Was done in less than an hour.
How many years have you actually done in Holland?
In Holland, it was 5 year, 4 month.
Yeah.
And in England, it was 11 years. So in total,
What's gone?
16 years, 4 months, 22 days.
How does anyone, or how did you get through doing, I mean, a night in the cell for most people is enough. How do you get through prison life like that? How do you get through? What's the mentality? What's the mindset to be able to get through that?
Well, the mindset at the beginning of it, when I was in England, was to escape. But once they put me into a place where I couldn't escape, your mindset changes. There's no way out of this. Absolutely no way out of it. You'd need a battalion of soldiers to get you out of a place like that. It was so well protected, and the amount of machinery that you'd need to break into it would be just ridiculous. You're never getting out. I don't think anybody will escape from there. My mindset in Holland was led by keeping fit and education. The Dutch was very good at that. Even though all my visits was behind glass, even the teachers had to be searched to come in. But I learned guitar in there, I learned Dutch even more. So I had 2 or 3 education sessions every week, and then you used to have to work in there. So you kept yourself busy, or I kept myself busy. And they allowed me to paint and draw every week as well. So the main thing in there for us was cooking and training. They allowed us to cook under very strict regime. They used to give us a knife about that big, 3 inches, with plastic on the end and a tiny little blade. But they had to give, once they put us into the kitchen, which was small, they had a little slit that the knife fitted through. So they gave you the knife while you was in the kitchen, but you couldn't come out of the kitchen until you give the knife back, obviously. And then, I don't know, I just think that once you're upset that you're there and there's nothing you can do about it, you can't just keep thinking about it. You've got to get on with doing what you're doing. I knew that once the Dutch sentence was finished, I'd be back in England with my family, because the visits in the triple Cat A in Holland was horrendous for the people who used to come. My family used to come in. They had to go into the normal prison, a normal Cat A type prison. And then once he was in there and been through the severe searches which was put on him there, they then had to get put into a little van and drove all the way around the prison, and then apply to come into the triple Cat A prison. searches started all over again. And then they came to visit me, but they was on the other side of the glass, triple thick, bulletproof glass. Everything was cameraed. They had a cameraman, well, two of them, used to stand in the one next to where I was being visited. So they was filming me as I was thinking, but with proper camera. But they had to stand there in case I said something that they had to act on straight away. It was that, well, not paranoid, but security, innit? And,
Yeah.
the visitors had to put up with that as well. It's bad for them. But I had to go through a full strip search to go on any visit, including with the education or the governors and things like that. It's very strict. That's why they closed it down, because it was too strict. They literally had to move us all out.
Prison did you have to go to when you arrived back in the UK from the Netherlands?
Well, they brought us back with the plane, put us in armoured transport, and took us to Highdown Prison, I think I'm sure it was at the time, and put me on the wing like normal. That lasted for about 2 hours until they realised who I was, and then they came onto the wing with right gear on and everything, and put me in the block once they found out. But they was nice with it. They did what they could in there. It wasn't their problem. I wasn't their problem. I shouldn't have been there. Put me in the block for about 4 weeks, and then they moved us to Whitemore A prison, but to the triple Cat A unit inside there. So there's a prison inside the prison itself. And that wasn't as strict as the Dutch triple Cat A. We was allowed to mingle in there. Kenny Noye was in there. Mickey Steele from the Essex Boys, he was in there. And a Turkish lad, he was in there. He got 40 years for heroin smuggling. And that was it, me. So there's 4 of us in there, and that was the maximum that they'd allow at the time. Nobody ever came in or out of there. But it used to be a 24 guard, what they call a 24 guard unlock. So they had to have a minimum of 24 prison officers to open us up. And like I say, it was a prison inside a prison. I think they came about it for the IRA. Before that, they was in there, but somebody escaped from the IRA because they all got a bit too familiar with each other, the guards and everything. So that was really strict as well, but not as strict as the Dutch. But because Kenny Noye was in there, he took them to court as well. He took them to the court for breaching human rights, and he won the case. And that got shut down as well under the same grounds of inhumane and degrading treatment. Because what they used to do is they used to come, they had us on it was a 2-wing single ground on the ground prison, but it had 2 wings of 8. I think it was 8 and 8. And they used to move us about every week. But every night they used to come and open the catch and either shine a torch on you until you moved or slam the door. So it was all recorded and thinking. So he took them to court over that because they got the recordings and everything and shown the European court how they was treating us. And they closed it down in one go. They moved all 4 of us out in one day. I ended up getting...
You shared a cell with Kenny Noye?
No.
No.
Cat A prisoners, you never share cells.
But you knew Kenny Noye, you spoke to him a lot.
Sorry?
You knew Kenny Noye, though. You used to have conversations with him.
Yeah, well, in the end, I spent 9 years with Kenny. We moved from there, a couple of 2.5 years, 3 years in there. I got moved to York, to Full Sutton, which is a Cat A prison. So now I've been downgraded to double Cat A, which is still very strict. And Kenny got moved onto the wing in Whitemore, but they soon moved him out of there and shipped him up to York, as far away from his house as they could. And he came on my wing, so it was another 6 or 7 years I spent with him on there. And we used to cook together.
Talking. Yeah, what was life like talking with Kenny Noye?
Kenny's just a normal person, down to earth as you can think. Grew up with next to nothing and did his own thing. He became a multi-millionaire. He's got a vast empire of houses and things like that. But obviously he had his own problems when he got involved with the Brinks Mat, even though he wasn't part of that. He'd already been smuggling gold for a couple of decades by that time.
Did you ever mention anything about the Brinks Mat or what happened with the policeman in his
that he wasn't involved in it. It wasn't him. He'd only been to prison once and he got 7 years, but that was a VAT fraud. It wasn't for anything to do with the gold or anything. But when they came, because he had a smelters on his land, because he literally bought kilos a week Kenny, of gold, and then smuggled it into England and did the VAT on it. But he earned millions at it. Obviously, he was up to other things. He had houses in London in the 60s, in the centre of London. He was known as a slum landlord at the time. I think everybody was, though, around those times. And he had loads of money behind him. And then he got involved in the fight on the road rage and got into that stabbing, and his life changed again and ended up in there. But he killed the policeman, didn't he?
So, on the grounds, because they did the stakeout, and a couple of the police were wearing the ski masks, and the dogs went out, and obviously he got off with it, but they were saying it was excessive force. But as you know, as soon as he got off of it, he got arrested again.
Yeah, they don't like him.
No.
But I can only deal with the man I've got in front of me. Can't deal with his past and think, oh, well, I don't agree with what he did. Never have done.
Yeah.
But he did it under split seconds, when somebody jumps down from a tree and they've got masks on and you've got a gold thing in your house and thing. It's sort of understandable, but, these things happen in life. I've got stories of people who have got far more heavier sentences than what Kenny got, and doing natural life now. I mean, these are the stories that I bring up on the school things. You just Kenny was just an everyday man who hit it big in the 60s and became who he became. Just a normal person. Talked like a proper Cockney type in my mind. And we just cooked together. We got on okay. Didn't really spend a lot of time together. We did a bit of training together, and we used to cook together. He used to chop the food up, and I used to cook it. That was it really. His own friends and his own visits, but he was like a superstar in prison. The amount of women that used to send him nude photographs, and it's ridiculous. How many people? He was a double murderer by this time. How many women out there was writing to him and things? It's ridiculous.
And with the whole Stephen Cameron thing, you said it was just that ego or anger or whatever because of there was the confrontation. And he went back to his car.
He got beat up. He got beat up. He didn't like it. He went back to his car and got a knife out, and that's why he got the murder charge rather than attempted or just a scuffle type thing. It's a deliberate act to go back, but that could only be your ego, really. He said, I think he said that it was just a bad mistake by him. He had to get away because he had some stolen watches in the car or something. But to be getting involved in road rage and then fighting and getting beat up and then going to get a knife, like I say, like me, you just lose your mind now and again. You do stupid things and it takes decades to get over it. Obviously,
that split second.
When you're killing somebody, I don't think you ever get over it. He was never happy in prison, let's put it that way, even though he had all that money.
Well, it's all that money, but you lose all that time. You can't use it. You can't spend it, and time's going. But one of the other people, sorry, go on.
He came to one of my art exhibitions in London and did a little video. It's the only video he's ever done. I did a little video with me and him talking about the painting, the self-portrait that I painted of him. And he's not been seen since, really. Stays out of the way. Just trying to...
he's
just getting old now, isn't he?
It's quite odd. Yeah, it must be heading towards
70 odd.
Definitely late 70s.
Yeah. Still look well. Last time I seen him a couple of years ago.
You ever stay in contact with him, or
no, not really. A few calls, nothing. Not been out for a drink or a meal or anything like that. He came to me thingy, which was good of him. I've not seen or heard from him since. That was 2 years ago. A lot of people get in touch with me, asking me can you put me in touch with him because I'm the only one who's ever done an interview with. I asked him when we was doing it. I said, people are going to come at you now, don't you? Asking for an interview. He said, listen, if anybody comes, I don't want to know. He's only come here to promote the painting and the gallery. And it's still not been in with anybody, I don't think.
No, if he had, you would know about it. If he's on podcasts, in interviews, that would be big news just because of his name and reputation. So you would assume not. One of the people that you were in prison with was Dennis Nilsson. I've got him down as the Muswell Hill murderer. I don't know how many different nicknames they've got for serial killers. Was he just the standard, irrelevant guy that, you would never even notice? Typical sort of serial killer.
Yeah. When I first, I was a barber on the wing. because I was double Cat A when I went into full time. So they don't let you get off the wing, double Cat A. The only thing they can give you is wing jobs like a wing cleaner or a barber. So I was a barber and I started cutting his hair. I think he'd been in about 33 years by that time. There was nothing left of him, really. He was maybe, I'd say, between 50 and 60 kilo, soaking wet, but he was still really healthy. He used to, because he was retired, he was allowed to have his door open on the wing, but he wasn't allowed to hang about on the wing, so he could only go in and out of his cell to do something. And he did it for years, but he was completely vegan, never ate any of the prison food, only vegetables. And he used to grow his own seeds, like alfalfa and stuff like that in his cell. He used to live off that. He used to do a bit of painting. They stopped letting him have paints after about 35 years. But because I was doing my degree course, they couldn't stop me getting paints in and brushes. I used to give him paints and brushes from my little bits that I had in there. And he used to paint like Christmas tree or chocolate box paintings, little pretty things. But he used to get about 20, 30,000 pounds for them because of who he was. But he never really said anything, I think it took about 2 years for him to talk to me properly as a barber. He didn't really say anything about his crimes. I asked him why did he kill him after he'd already got the money. I said, what was all that about? And he just said, just something I did. I didn't really, it was just his thing. He thought he might have seen him and left some evidence behind, but he was ruthless. He didn't look it. Little frail old man when I met him. And towards his end, he caught motor neurons disease. And he went from the most active man on the wing to not being able to move, really. And I decided to do his portrait. And
Yeah, what
had
makes
to
you decide
carry.
to do that?
I just thought that it's a one in a lifetime opportunity to be in front of a monster and to put him on canvas because there's no photographs of him anywhere. So I drew some sketches, which I've still got, did the portrait, which I've still got. I'll never sell the portrait. The portrait's either going to some crime museum or if somebody does want to buy it, the proceeds will definitely go to the victims of crime. I'm determined never to take a penny out of that painting.
It'd be fascinating to see what that would go for, though.
It's been valued at 50,000 at the moment from a gallery in London, but they double the price of anything anyway. All galleries charge 50%. So, it's still there. Like I say, if somebody buys that, it's going to victims of crime anyway.
Yeah, which would be amazing. With yourself in prison, where was the time that you thought, I can't do this anymore? I've got to change my life. I can't carry on.
Well, more or less when the Dutch judge passed down a consecutive sentence to the 22. It was 22 plus 8 years from the Dutch. So I had to do the 8 years, more or less around those times. Like in Holland, really.
In Holland, were you just sort of sat there one day on the bed going, yeah, I'm done? Or did you just find yourself going in a different direction?
Yeah, well, both really. I knew that I was done. There's no doubt about that. I had no sort of feelings that something could change. I knew I was going back to to England, and I could appeal and start all that process again, even though I knew it was worthless, really, because I just knew it was going to be worthless. The first thing they hit me with when I got back to England is that I was out of time. So that point of escaping, once you're sentenced in England, you get 28 days to appeal. And when I say you get 28 days, it's not 29 days, it's 28 days. There's no appeal after that point, no matter what the circumstances. You then have to apply for so many things and so many complications that if anybody's ever thinking about escaping, you've got to think that you've got to be 100% guilty of what you're doing. If you think you've got an appeal and you escape and come back, you've got no address. You can't even approach the courts, I had to approach all sorts of things just to get an appeal on sentencing and the not guilty and guilty side of it. It took me 14 years of appealing before I ended up in the European Court of Appeal. And they said, listen, this is your last appeal. You've got nowhere, don't bother. this is the end. You've got no more appeal points. You've got no more anything. But it was all technicalities. I was trying to get something off. I wasn't thinking of thingy, but, knock a couple of years off or something. But they didn't, and the sentence stayed, so I ended up doing the full, literally, I ended up doing the full 30 years, because once I got out, I was on probation for 11 years, which was a thing in itself.
Yes. What year did you get released?
So I've been out 13 years now.
13 years. 13 years. And so what did you do when you got out, 2012? That's you done. You're never going back to that. What
Yeah,
what
when
what
I,
are you going to do with yourself then?
I got released from Loudon Grange prison, uh, and all the way through me 11 years, I was painting, sending the paintings out to my family. They was keeping them and storing them. And I literally came out of the gates of Loudon Grange with about 20 other paintings, and just won the Costler Prize in prison. It's a big group of charities which involve the whole of the prison sentencing network, 27,000 entrants, and I won the Platinum Prize, which was a top prize, for a painting that I did, What If Jesus Came Back, which was a painting of Jesus being, I don't know if you know it, but Caravaggio did a painting of the arrest of Christ, and I used that as the basis for if Jesus came back and he got arrested. So he was being arrested by the prison. So all the screws was there with cameras and things. Quite a good painting. But the head of Timson's Shoes bought it, paid £500 for it. I won the bronze prize at the same time as well. And at the same time, I just finished my degree. So I got a BA with honours. Took 9 years.
Brilliant. How'd that make you feel? You've come out of a degree, you got a degree, completely
Yeah,
different
great.
achievement to what you were doing, which
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
felt like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it did. It did. When they had the big presentation in the prison, I mean, they brought the governors from all over the country, not just for me, for different things. But I was one of the first to get an arts degree in the prison system. But like I say, it was a lot of work. It was 9 years it took me to get the degree in there, because we could only do it through obviously distant learning, and we could only do one course a year, and I needed the points for thingy. So it took a
Yeah.
period of 7 years technically, but because of the moving between wings and prisons, you get taken off the education and you have to join the list again, because a lot of people think it's easy to get education in prison, but it's not. I'll give you the numbers of how difficult it is. In Full Sutton, there was over 5,000 prisoners in total, and half of them was on what we call the protected side, and the other half is the normal wings. All the paedophiles and weirdos
Yeah.
are on one side and we're on the other. But out of our side of 2,500 prisoners, between 70 and 80 was allowed to go to education. That was it. All the
Why
rest
so
had to go
few?
to work. What was
Why
that?
so few? Why so few?
Why so few? That's a question for the prison board. But in my mind, I've always said it, the prison's not there to rehabilitate people. It's there to keep the industrial complex going. It's a massive industry. It employs thousands and thousands of people. Education-wise, I think they do as little as they can to fight to get on education. It's very difficult.
You've had to work really hard to get. It's not like, oh yeah, while I was in prison, I did a degree. You've had to work really hard and over a long period of time. That's a lot of consistency and
Yeah.
goal setting and focus to achieve that.
A lot of
That's
strip searches
above
as
and
well.
beyond.
A lot of strip searches to get your degree, because you have to move from your cell to the education part. So you're going through different things, and if you're carrying like I was carrying all paints and everything, they pull you out all the time and strip search you, check everything you've got, even check some of the paint tubes. But yeah, it's not easy, but it was possible. I did it. If
Yeah,
I could do it, anybody
just
could do it.
about.
Yeah. I also studied music in there. I got grade 8 in the Royal College of Music, got up to grade 8 in that as well. What else do we do? English, quite a few things. Once you get on education, it's okay. But you don't get paid for being on education, so that's why a lot of them didn't do it.
Recorded it's better after.
Yeah.
What led you to where you are now then with the education and going into the schools? Because that sounds genius. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, since I've been released, I've been a professional artist, as I was showing you in my studio. That's all I've done really, paint pictures and sell them, do exhibitions and little bits of helping people and teaching people. But over we started last year with this, just kept hearing about school stabbings and madness, going on everywhere. And one particular teacher who's part of the group now, because I have a group of 12 people involved in this. It's not just me. We've literally got doctors and accountants and professional people, head teacher as well. He'd done what you've done. He'd seen one of my podcasts or one of the documentaries that I'd seen, and he just sent a random email, to see if I would come in and speak to his lads. So it's a local school. I don't want to mention the school, but there's got quite a few schools that we're working with. I said, yeah. He said, we'll pay you. I said, no, I don't want paying. I'll just come in and do it. So we set it up, went into the school a few times, spoke to the head teacher, to the area education people, and, got involved with a couple of other charities in different places. And arranged to do a certain morning for the school. And I met somebody else who was involved in it, he'd done 25 years in youth rehabilitation as such. He sort of now, we decided that it'd be best if he comes out and says a few things about working and things like that, and then he introduces me to the kids. And I then come out and tell them some of the stories that I've got. And I've got loads of stories of terrible things that have happened to young 18, 19-year-olds, and I explain it to them and tell them what happened to them in prison and explain what it's like in prison and explain to them how close you can come to death in prison just through basic illnesses. I was rushed to hospital twice in prison with blood clots in my legs. And when I say rushed, I mean rushed. Whereas the police was armed police running into the hospital, clearing the hospital. I was going in to be scanned, and they had dogs in the prison. I mean, in the hospital, with the helicopter hovering the whole time I was in there. And one of the top police said, "Well, he can't go in that room without the dogs." The surgeon said, "Well, he can't go in the room with the dogs. It's just not feasible." So I said, "Well, he's not going in then." And the surgeon said, "Well, if you take him back, he'll be dead before you get back." I had two of them. A couple of problems with my kidneys, and a couple of close to death experiences in there. And there's no rush to get anybody out of a prison into a hospital time. There's a lot of deaths in prison.
Yeah.
I've looked up the last time was 2 years ago that I recorded, and it's 320 people died in prison. Over 130 people died in police custody. I mean by them police beating them up, just dying, having an heart attack or thingy. These places are not conducive to a healthy environment, stress-wise especially. And there's a lot of people, like I say, it's over 300 every year die in prison.
Yeah, it's almost one a day. I mean, as a therapist, I can't think of anything worse than being in prison. The effects it will have on somebody's mental health is detrimental.
It's not easy, but like I said, the main thing that kept me going was education, art. I'd loved art from being a young kid. I got me my first job painting cartoon characters, and Jimi Hendrix was my thing in 1975, I think, when I was doing it. I used to sell the Jimi Hendrix paintings that I did, which really weren't anything, but I used to sell them, even back then. And that's what got me the job at an advertising agency. The art and the music took me through the sentence. And of course, the gymnasium kept as fit as I could do under such conditions. I was a power lifter. I broke one of the records in prison of 220 kilo bench press, and I was big, 24 stone. 24 stone with 17% body fat. So, but it kept me safe as well, though, because there's a lot of violence in prison. I've watched a couple of
Yeah.
people die.
But when it comes to like doing your sentence, I'd imagine people just want to get their head down. Is that easy to do, or is it like you sort of see in the movies where there's people turn up at your cell door and they want to cause trouble? How do you go of avoiding that kind of thing?
There's only a few different groups in prison. There's druggies to start with, not in the triple cat A, because there's nothing allowed gets through there. But on the wings of the Cat A prisons, there's only 4 Cat A prisons in England: Franklin, Full Sutton, Whitemoor, and Long Lartin. All the rest are Cat B prisons made up into certain parts of it, could be Cat A. But there's only 4 main prisons in there, and they're either run by the Muslims or they're run by the normal criminals. But they normally Full Sutton. When I was in there, there's a lot of Muslims in there. They run their own thing, and then you've got the other groups, the whites, blacks, any other mixed groups, but they all form gangs in all of them. You know, I was part of the Manchester and Liverpool type gangs that included blacks, whites, Indians, Pakistanis. But then you've got the Muslims who stay on their own, who don't want to mix with those. A lot of the fights come because of that in there. So, a lot of fights got involved in a couple more out of protection than anything. But I became my little group. Well, it was a big group, I suppose, of Scousers and Manx really together, and we protected each other, and the Muslims protected their own people. And the only people that got in between them was the drug people who either got into trouble buying drugs from either group, and had to run to one of the other groups or join the other groups, and or go on to the special wings under Rule 43, under protection. But yeah, there's not many groups. It's not like America where you've got the like the Ku Klux Klan type white supremacists and things.
White supremacists, yeah.
We just have groups of criminals, and you've got groups of Muslims, and you've got Muslims who are fighting Muslims in there as well. But they're the 2 main groups. And
Yeah.
you'd either do what I did and become massively strong and, healthy sort of thing, or you start taking drugs and destroy the rest of your life in there. There's a lot of heavy drug
It's
use
good you
there.
Yeah, of course, because it gets away, it numbs the pain, and you can forget for that short. But there's probably not a lot
Yeah.
else to do if you're not working studying education. So it's good that you had the strength to do what you did
Yeah, well,
to get
glad
you through that.
I never smoked in there. I never did anything really,
Ah,
apart from going to the gym. My biggest thing was what time was the gym open and what time was the education open.
yeah.
But there's a lot of people like me in there. I think the drug side of it is not the big side of it. The other side of it is just normal people who are trying to get through. Well, not criminals who are
Yeah.
trying to get through the life.
Yeah. Just coming towards the end, Stephen, because I'm endlessly grateful for the amount of time you've given me. What would you say to youngsters today? When you've lived the life that you've lived, you've been through everything, and you've got youngsters potentially could go into a life of crime, ones that think it might be glamorous, they're going to make lots of money. It's a life choice. What would you say to them?
Like what we're saying on the school programs that we're doing now, uh, we explain. We have 3 speakers. One of them was part of all the Moss Side gangs and stuff like that, involved in the riots and all sorts of things, but never been to prison and just carried on with his life in between doing what he was doing, bits and bobs. The other lad, the other bloke, he's been involved in youth rehabilitation for like 25 years. So he explains to them the difference of being a plumber and being a criminal, over the decades, what happens to the one or the other. And then I go in and explain. First, I explain who I am and where I come from, briefly, because we also put out like a little film before to explain quite a few things. And I'm just doing another thing, on like a little short introduction film that we're going to present to the education board in London about what we do. But I tend to bring it down to when I was their age. By the time I was the age that we're talking to, like 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, I'd already got like 5 or 6 criminal record, one from GBH to stealing cars, commercial burglaries at the age of 13, 14, and explained to them what that did to me. At the time, it just led on to learning more things and becoming bigger. But then I explained to him that when I did that, it was different. We didn't have social media. We didn't have the ability to be tracked everywhere we go. I'm more or less trying to explain to them that what you're trying to do today is nearly impossible. If you think that you can get to what I got to, you're fooling yourself. You're fooling everybody around you. Nobody's going to get to them levels anymore. The police in this country are exceptional, really, at what they're doing, especially when it comes to international drug smuggling and stuff like that. The odds are against them anyway. And then I go on to explain I've got quite a few different stories, but one of them is really the worst one. It's a young lad, 18 when he started, 16 when he started getting involved in gangs, but not technically gangs, but his mates. So they all grew up in a poor area, and then they start dealing a few drugs and bits and bobs. They decide that they're going to go out to a nightclub. About 10 of them go out to a nightclub. One of them takes a knife with him, only one, and ends up with an argument. Now, the person who he's arguing with, he sort of overpowers him. So he goes out and gets a gun, comes back and shoots him dead, right? So then he's the one with the gun. Now, I was on the wing with these people for 8, 9 years, so I know who did what and when. So then this other lad's out in the same group, but he's out with his girlfriend. Once all the telephone calls come out and the people start talking, because mostly that's what they do, when you get dragged in for murder, you're guaranteed that at least one of you is going to tell them everything, because people panic. They know they're going to get 30 plus years or whatever, and they'll start talking. So you're never safe. I try to explain to them that if you get involved with a gang in this day and age, you're never safe. There's nobody that you can say, oh, trust him to support me through 30-year prison sentence, because nobody does it anymore. You don't. Yeah. So a lot of these people, they all got charged with joint enterprise, 8 of them altogether. This one particular lad, a Muslim lad, young lad, came in 19 years old onto the wing, and me and him got on. He used to like training, and we trained, but we also became the people who people came to solve the problems. He solved a lot of problems with the Muslims and between the non-Muslims, should we say. There's a few fights over certain things. We had a big Christmas dinner where we got some Muslims who came in and joined us, and they got attacked by the radical Muslims, literally the ones who got caught in London for the bombings. They was in there converting people and thingies. But then we had normal people in there, normal Muslims and normal Christians and normal thingies who mixed and got on quite well. But then the radicals came and everything changed, and everything was against this and against that. But he was always solving problems. But he was in the nightclub, unknown to him. One of his friends went and got a gun and shot somebody. He got 34-year recommended for joint enterprise. He's still in now, but the Birmingham lads. So he should have been in a prison called Long Larton down that side. And because, again, somebody grassed up what had gone on, he couldn't go down there because he was in there. So this person who told the police what everybody had done, but was just lies to get himself a reduced prison sentence, still had to do it. He still got I think he got 18 recommended, and he put everybody else in. So after about 7 or 8 years, I got downgraded and sent to Loudon Grange. But within a few months, I'd heard that this lad had gone down to education, seen the other lad in there, him and his other friend, always carrying blades and things in there, stabbed him, got a 22-year IPP on top of his 34-year life sentence, which literally meant that his life sentence stopped and he had to begin his IPP, 22 years.
It's an IPP?
In the public protection. It's a life sentence, technically. If you don't do anything while you're in prison and you get this, well, I'll give you another thing before I go on, but he ended up, literally, the judge said, I'm going to stop your life sentence. You start your IPP now. And in 22 years, if you get to that point, because it's nearly impossible to get to the time if you don't do all the courses and everything that they tell you to do. And you get in one little fight and it'll give you an 18 months, what we call a knockback. So it sets you back every time. There's people who've got IPP for 2 years. They've been in 14, 15 years. It's hundreds, maybe thousands of them like that because they won't go to the classes or they get in a fight. It's a terrible thing. There's loads of people fighting to get it discontinued. But he ended up, the judge saying, well, you do your 22 years and then you start your life sentence. So everything stops on his life sentence. So he does it. Let's say he gets to the 22 years without any incident, which is nearly, like I say, nearly impossible. He's still got 50 odd years to do before he gets out. And it all started because somebody took a knife to a club and we explain it to him. And then I've got more stories. I've got stories about the Black Panther. I've got stories about young lads who got into similar things, who are doing natural life, who are never going to get out. Really nice, normal people when you're talking to them on the yard, but they've committed 2 murders over a period of time, and the head teacher from the big school up here, we're talking 600 kids here in a massive hall, and the head teacher said that, what she said, the first time I've ever had silence. So, we're doing something.
I can imagine.
And now what we want to do now is what we're working on now is we're going to build a prison cell, a collapsible one, and we're going to put everything in the normal cell that we've got. We're going to put the sound system in there where the students can go in. We're going to drop it off the day before or the thingy. And then they're going to sit in there and we're going to show them, well, we're not going to show them, we're going to let them hear the sounds of a prison opening up in the morning. They're the things that haunt me most of the time, is that you sat in your cell or you're in bed and then you got the guards coming kicking your doors or hitting the doors with the batons every morning for 16 and a half years. And the noise of 60 to 120 men opening up in the morning with every door steel and doors clanking, and it's a cacophony of horrible noises, with keys jangling and, it's, I want to bring them that sensory thing, where they're in the confines of a cell, a 6B cell,
I think that's whoever come up with that, it is a genius idea.
I came up with it.
Genius idea. You did.
Well, between me and the head teacher, he came to me and it was his idea to do this and introduce it to the kids. It was a bold move on his side, and that's why he's part of the company now, because we're going to take it all across the country, really. We don't know how many we're going to be doing a week. We're going to be in a couple of schools a week. We're going to invite things to join us in changing people's minds, one school at a time.
Is there any sort of like website or anything that people can find, or is that something still to come?
Yeah, well, we're just loading everything up at the moment. We've got time now till September. We've got no more appearances. It's StephenMeProductions.com. And on there, we're going to show some of the documentaries that we've thingy, some of the things that I'm working on now with Premiere Pro, and I'm auditing about two movies at the moment. And something else I learned in there was Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop in prison. Well, that's given me an ability to work with all these technical programs now, like Premiere Pro and all those, like I'm doing now. I'll just show you that. You can see it.
Yes.
That's us in the school with the head teacher and thinking. I'm just putting all them things together now. So they should, they're going to be going on the website. Practically all my time in prison was taken up with education.
What's the website? What's the link for the website? What's the website address?
Stephen with PH, me, MEE.
Yeah.
So that website's up, but we've not got anything technically on it. We've got a few pages on it, and we're just loading up a few documentaries now. And because we have to be careful when we're filming in the schools, we can't film the front of the children and things like that. It's all very secure in them prisons. Them schools, to me, feel like prisons these days.
I'll include the website in the links in the description on the episode there as well, and also your Instagram as well.
I've got Instagram.
Stephen, it's been absolutely fascinating listening to you telling me everything. I could listen to you for hours, and still wouldn't be long enough. I always finish by asking my guests if there's a particular song that resonated with them or meant something to them at a particular time whether it's been going through adversity, coming out of it there as well. Is there anything that sticks in your mind?
Yeah, when they moved me from Strangeways to Risley Prison, I had the old what's it called? Little mini thing with a little mini disc, the original mini disc. Remember it? And I had on that on a loop, and it's stereo MCs connected. Yeah, so that's what I was listening to for a full day. So that was a song. Just kept going on and on.
I'll include that in the link for people to click onto and listen to. Thank you ever so much for your time, Stephen. Absolute pleasure listening to you.
Yeah, my
I
pleasure.
really appreciate your time.